Hey guys, let's talk about Feet in Elden Ring and why Fire Giant represents Hidetaka Miyazaki. Now, I want to make one thing clear. Female feet were always primarily used to portray female beauty. That much we all know. However, I believe that feet represent two more things. The mindset of Hidetaka Miyazaki at the time of the game's development, and the state of the series itself. To get where I'm going with this, we need to look at the past of the series as well as some outside info. Some of the central points and ultimate inspiration for the creation of this video were pulled from two videos. Hawkshaw's video, Solaire's Secret Identity, and Ratatosker's video, The Painted Worlds are metaphors for video games. The main takeaways from Solaire's Secret Identity are as follows. Solaire is Miyazaki. Demon Souls, as an in-development project, was in a bit of a limbo, and Miyazaki asked to lead it, as he had existing passion for the fantasy genre. Demon Souls was a commercial fail, and effectively Miyazaki's lowest point, to the point of almost losing hope in his vision. Dark Souls was Miyazaki's second chance to do everything right. I believe that the insecurity from Demon Souls' failure spilled over into Dark Souls 1, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Ratatosker's The Painted Worlds are metaphors for video games has one main takeaway for us, and that is that Miyazaki saying through the character of the painter that it's time to let the old world, in this case the Soul series, die so that from its essence a new one in Elden Ring can rise. Now, before we get to the Feet of Elden Ring and what they ultimately represent, we need to look at the series so far. Starting, of course, with the beginning, Demon Souls. In Demon Souls, we notably have the Maiden in Black. It's Miyazaki's passion project, so of course the feet are front and center, getting their own cutscene and having the Maiden dangle them playfully. Miyazaki is happy, the game is the first in the series, and the feet reflect that hopefulness. It's notable that in the 2020 remake of Demon Souls, made by Bluepoint rather than From Software, the Maiden's feet are filthy. Despite many degenerates loving the change, it does signify a distancing from Miyazaki's original vision. Looking at Dark Souls 1 after that, we see not much. Recalling the information from Hawkshaw's video, this is Miyazaki partially at his lowest, with the state of the series being unclear. The only qualifying pair would be Priscilla. However, her ability to turn invisible just further reinforces the insecurity about this game. Miyazaki already led one very similar project, and it failed, and now he's doing it again. That's why I believe that the lack of feet in DS1 represents that insecurity of both the director and the series. Dark Souls 2 was not directed by Miyazaki and as such features no feet. The Emerald Herald has one animation where she dangles them playfully. However, without taking even her shoes off, that feels more like a nod to the Maiden in Black from Demon Souls rather than a statement on the series. In her stark opposition, Dark Souls 3 is full of feet, and each pair has a story of their own. Starting off with the Firekeeper. She is there from start to finish in a role similar to the Maiden in Black. I believe her feet represent Miyazaki's now regained confidence in both himself and the series. He knows that Dark Souls 3 will be a great game, and by this point the games have enough of a following to where it's expected to be a commercial success. The DLC feet, however, tell a different story. Starting with the painter. The point was already made by Ratatosker. The painter, barefooted as she is, represents Miyazaki by telling us that it's time to let the old world, that of Dark Souls, burn away and to use its essence to create a new one, that of Elden Ring. In her opposition stands Frida, again barefooted, representing a different ending and possible future for the Souls series. She wants the world to keep going, despite the noticeable rot. She chooses stagnation and decay over the risk of a new world. Her feet represent the continuation of the Soul series without innovation and change. She is also a boss, arguably the hardest boss in the game. She is the greatest challenge for us, but also for Miyazaki himself. It is only by defeating what she represents that he can keep going on to other, different projects. With that out of the way, we can finally talk about Elden Ring. Elden Ring has an interesting relationship with feet. While we have quite a few examples of them, they all feel kinda wrong. Compared to their predecessors, they feel out of place, undesired, and almost mocked. But before we get into that, we need to talk about the elephant in the room first: Fire Giant. It is my firm belief that Fire Giant represents Hidetaka Miyazaki himself. In his video, the next major From Software game, What Miyazaki Tells Us, Zeusor mentions the hiring of someone new in the role of creative director, as well as Miyazaki stating how he would like to move on to other different projects. That's why, when the Fire Giant sacrifices his foot, it represents Miyazaki, almost literally passing on the torch to his successor. He is passing on the series, and when we take a look at the representation of feet in the game, it only becomes more clear. So let's take a look at them. Starting with the main girl, Melina. While both her opening shots contain the lower parts of her legs, in the first, when getting off of Torrent, her feet are blurry. In the second, containing an upward spanning shot, the shot is cropped at her ankles. On a different note, she offers to play the role of maiden, rather than just being our maiden. That emphasizes a greater difference between her and her counterparts. She, from the start, basically knows that she is different from them, and that she is no longer needed to represent neither Miyazaki nor the series itself. She is almost there as one last hurrah, one last little victory lap before the end of an era. To drive that point home, just look at her final scene, right after the Fire Giant sacrifices his foot and, subsequently, faces his end. As right after Miyazaki gives up the series, her work is done, her destiny is fulfilled, and with that, we don't really need her anymore. We don't really need him anymore. While Runala's stompers are on clear display, she is catatonic. Her feet are useless, be it during the fight or as an NPC. With their lack of utility, I believe that her barefootedness is more of a reference to Rosario rather than a representation of any original idea. We must mention the Albinurics as well, including Latenna and the Giant Woman. Barefooted female warriors, yet unable to use their feet. They seek their own place in the world, never truly belonging anywhere. They represent, or will represent, all of us. No feet to guide us, no Miyazaki. Straying in hopes of finally finding a place to call home again once the series finally ends. Fia, as a quick mention, represents a different timeline. One with a wrong ending. A timeline where Miyazaki never leaves, and the Souls games are never able to die. Even after her death, she leaves behind a bloated corpse, one that should have been left well enough alone. The soulless corpse representing a soulless franchise. Another quick mention are the Oracle Envoys, who will get their own video hopefully soon. Feetless, they usher in new gods and ages. Almost a bit too on the nose of a reference to Miyazaki leaving the series. Next up we have Sister Frida's spiritual successor. Malenia is important. She is Elden Ring. Her feet are, well, beautiful, well-shaped, shiny, and most importantly of all, fake. Hardly more than a coat of paint hiding the rotting real deal. Elden Ring is that new fresh coat of paint on the series that tried to end once already. Now the source of the rot can be debated, whether Miyazaki thinks himself to be its source, or the series formula itself. Marika, by the time we see her in game, does nothing more than just point out the obvious. Once the fire giant surrenders his feet, and Malenia sacrifices herself, what more is there really to say? As a parallel to Melena's entrance, the upward spanning shot never even bothers to include her feet, a hint to Miyazaki being missing and one of the last things we get to see of this game. Even the poster for Shadow of the Earth Tree, sure, it has feet. Mikola's feet. A man's feet. Almost as if to mock our love of Miyazaki's work. You notice I left Rani for the ending. I of course did it for a reason. It is the canon ending. I believe it is the canon ending of the game, but more importantly, it is the canon ending of the series. Rani hardly has any feet. They are dirty, ropey stumps, not fulfilling the role of feet in either looks nor utility. She is also a parallel to Fia. An opposite, if you will. Where Fia represents a soulless bloating corpse of a franchise, Rani represents the opposite, where what is supposed to die dies and what is supposed to move on moves on. The absence of her feet represents the absence of Miyazaki, and it is in that absence that all of us, the gamers, Miyazaki, and the Soul series have to keep moving. And I think Rani just says it better than I could.
To every living being and every living soul. Now cometh the age of the stars. 1,000-year voyage under the wisdom of the moon. Here beginneth the chill night that encompasses all, reaching the great beyond. Into fear, doubt, and loneliness, as the path stretcheth into darkness. Well then, shall we? My fair consort eternal.
Well, if you found this video and stuck around until the end, thank you. This is the first video I've ever made. It's honestly a fun little experiment. I will be making more on hopefully many different topics, and drop a sub if you feel like sticking around and Have a nice day.